What's going on, you guys? Ghost here to just talk about the drafts. I know it took place some time ago, but gotta do my research, make sure I know who to be talking about. So let's just talk about each pick down the line, and I'll talk about my review at the end. So with the first pick, fourth overall, the one that they tanked for, I took Cleland Farrell, lineman out of Clemson. This is the one that was the big curveball to the draft. Outside of the Cardinals taking Murray, made a lot of boards thought this guy was going to be mid round pick, mid first round. Some had him late first round, but the Raiders took him really high, and I think this is one of those times where teams disagree with what the media says. A lot of teams won't read what the media says, of course. They better not. So Mike Mayock, this is one of those times also where if Mike Mayock was working in the media still, people would have said this is a good pick. I mean, I don't know how many mock drafters base their boards. They use Mike Mayock or someone else for influence. But I think this is one of those times they would. And because his board is now secret, yeah, nobody saw this coming. Heck, unless you were John Gruden or Mike Mayock. So that being said, I had this guy as a top 10 draft pick. I don't think it's as big of a reach as what the media says. If you trade down outside of the top 10, he could have been gone. I think someone at 7, 8, or 9 would have taken him. There's a lot of risk when you trade down, and then some team swoops him and takes the guy you want. So I took Farrell, maybe a slight reach to some, but not an extreme reach, because I do not believe he would have been available in the 20s. So on the field, he's a pass rusher, and he can stop the run. He's versatile. He can do everything as a lineman, and that's what the Raiders wanted. And the Raiders have wanted a pass rusher thanks to trading the other one. So the pick makes sense. It's just maybe viewed as a reach compared to others, but he was a top 10 talent in my book, so I'm not as angry as some people are. With the second first-round pick, 24th overall, Raiders selected the running back Josh Jacobs out of Alabama. This is a pick everybody saw coming, especially if you've known John Gruden. You know that he takes the running backs. I brought up Cadillac Williams was the guy that he took during his time in Tampa Bay. Very chalk pick, best running back in the class. He can do it all from what I've seen. Does not have a lot of mileage on his legs. He didn't have to run the ball as much at Alabama, so not having as much mileage is actually a bigger thing in the long run. I think it always helps to have that, let alone he's got the size, the athleticism, all the intangibles, and he's a great comeback story, a guy who was really on the streets. Yet he worked his way to getting a scholarship at Bama and so on, and became a top prospect. It's pretty good. I don't think it's a big reach. When you take it in the 20s, you might have to take a guy who was projected in the second round, because you never know if somebody takes him in the late first. So definitely not a huge reach of a pick. I do think a team would have taken him in the 20s if the Raiders did not. So pretty fair pick. If he fits your system, he's exactly what you want. Plus, the Raiders' running back situation is kind of bare, so I have no problems with this first-round pick at all. With the third pick, this is the Amari Cooper draft pick. The Raiders took Jonathan Abram, the safety out of Mississippi State. I think this is a fair pick as well. The quarterbacks in this class were not very good to me. I do think this was a best player available situation. You look at the guys available, and I think I would have taken Abram too when I look back. The only thing I don't get when I'm watching the tape is people say he's a hard hitter. I don't get it. I don't get that at all. I don't see the hard hitting. But he looks like he could tackle well, he could cover well, he could do what you want for a safety, and he's a high character guy. All three of these first round picks have great work ethic on paper. That's what I've heard and read. But once again, we don't know what these guys are going to be until they're playing games. But on paper, I like this pick. This guy can play right away, just like Farrell and Jacobs. So Abram makes perfect sense. Safety is a need. I just don't know what happens to Carl Joseph. If he plays with the team or if he takes his spot, who knows? With the second round pick, the Raiders traded down a few times, and then they took Trayvon Mullen, the guy out of Clemson, the corner. Once again, best player available. I think the Raiders were targeting him the whole time. I mean, there's a lot of debate on corners. The Raiders may not have taken the best corner available, depending on what opinions are out there, but I actually think this was the best corner available. That being said, as I said earlier, the draft quarterbacks in this class were not as good as other positions. So they traded down, got some more value, and it makes sense. This also tells me that the Raiders had Greedy Williams off their draft board, who I think had some character concerns. So they took a guy, once again, with high character, a guy who thinks they could work. You have to trust Paul Gunther, the defensive coach, to develop this guy. I think he's a raw pick, but he has all the tools, specifically the physical tools, to be a great corner. But I don't know. I think he's a little streaky when I watch the tape. So I don't know if he can play right on day one, but can he develop? Sure, he can. I just don't think this may have been the best player available based on position, or overall. But this did fill a need. Corner is a need. So overall, it's not completely damning. Let's just say it's kind of a fair pick for second round. With the fourth round pick, the Raiders took Max Crosby, lineman, Eastern Michigan. This is a freak athlete who is supposed to develop. He's undersized right now, but for a fourth round pick, this is perfect value. Could be an edge rusher down the line. I like this pick a lot. Makes perfect sense. No questions asked. All right, with another fourth round pick, the Raiders got it from trading down a little bit with the other teams. They got Foster Moreau, the tight end out of LSU. This is a fair pick once again. I think he's a good blocker. Yeah, the tight ends really were very scarce, or very thin. They had the two guys taken in the first round, and the tight end position was kind of meh after that. So I think this is fair value. The Raiders did need a tight end. They had a lot of holes there, so I think this pick in Moreau is solid. Said mostly will be a blocking tight end in my book, but can he develop into a pass catcher? Yes. If he could be like Brandon Myers was, I would take that. That's pretty much what I'd project or hope for in this pick. With the last fourth round pick, once again they were able to. They basically traded down and then traded back up with the fourth round a bit, but they took Isaiah Johnson with the cornerback with the last fourth round pick they had. This is a fair pick for where they got him. A fourth round pick, you could take your projects. You could take a guy you think you could develop and work on. I do like that this is a defensive emphasis. This is a guy who would be an Al Davis draft pick. He has athlete, height, weight, speed. Not just speed, but height, weight. He's got all the physical size and specimen things that a cornerback wants in today's game. Nowadays, it's kind of like the trend where you had Richard Sherman, a guy who was a large, lanky corner, and they could develop him as a press cover guy. That's the common trend people want in a cornerback today. So Isaiah Johnson has all the physical tools of that. Does he have the coverage skills? We won't find out until he's playing games. But once again, this is a fair pick. It's a matter of now, do the Raiders develop him or not? That's the big question mark. But for what they got, I think it's a fine pick in the fourth round. No questions asked. In the fifth round, Raiders selected Hunter Renfrow after they were able to get some picks, and once again got a fifth round pick after not having one. So traded up. Hunter Renfrow, the Clemson Tiger. This is the guy remembered for the championship winning catch at Clemson. To me, he's undersized. This is a guy they hope could be a slot receiver. Of course, they already got Williams and Antonio Brown, so he could be the slot guy on paper. But my problem is he's undersized. He's slow. I don't think that game is going to translate to the NFL. That's my big problem. So we'll see. I mean, he's a great story just because he's an underdog and a guy that probably isn't looked at very much. But possession receiver, if he could be like, say, Brandon Stokely, a guy who was short, somewhat good at possession catching, then fine, he might be useful. But he doesn't have that ability to get open, I think, unless he has very great elite route running skills. So we'll see. This is a guy who's going to have to work his way on special teams if he wants to make the team and so on. I don't know what he's going to do on offense, but and on paper it's kind of a cool story just because he caught the championship-winning catch, and he was a great player at Clemson. But the NFL is another animal. That's reality. So with the last pick, they took Quinton Bell. This is an athlete, lineman. Guy who, it's crazy, he converted from wide receiver to lineman, so he's a freak athlete. He'll have to try to work his way on special teams if he wants to make the team. I think some undrafted free agents have a better chance of making the team than he does when they do the roster cuts, but we'll see. This is, as I said, a project, big long-term project. Seventh rounders are always worth a flyer. I mean, I'm not going to say it's bad or anything because, I said, in the seventh round, these teams could take anybody. and the odds of them making the team are very slim. Well, often these guys get cut within a year or two. So who knows? Special teams, he could be one of those blockers on a field goal or on a punt. He might be one of those players. But that's what I expect. So with all of these picks acquired, the 9 guys who were drafted by the Raiders, I like that they focused on defense because defense was unwatchable. They only took 3 offensive guys in Jacobs, Moreau, and Renfro. Credit where credit's due. They focused on the defense, positions that have been needed, and all 3 first-round picks to me can play right away. That's something I really, really want. When you're a bad team, your first-round picks got to help you immediately. You got to get better. You can't just afford this project thing towards the long term. That's what Colton Miller is. And this also brings me to the point, there were no offensive linemen taken. So Gruden is putting his vote of confidence in Colton Miller and the guys that he took. Obviously, the guard position is kind of a hole. They got Trent Brown, a tackle at free agency, still have Hudson. So the offensive line has 1 guard hole right now. They're going to have to hope from within they can develop one. I was hoping for 1 offensive lineman if you're going to talk about being nitpicky in this class, but overall, the first round is fair value. I think people will say Farrell's a reach, but I'm not as angry as others. 4th round picks, I really like what they got in the 4th round for what they projected. So once again, you got to develop these guys. You could draft talent, you could draft all these guys, but it means nothing if your coaches don't develop and work them. Okay, all these accomplishments in college now I'm not going to say they mean nothing, but it means nothing when it comes to developing these guys and seeing what they do in the NFL. Okay, we always have to get these production stats out the window because these guys are drafted on potential and what coaches think they can do with them. So in order for this to be a successful class, 5 out of 9 picks need to hit. You're not supposed to hit on them all. That's not how this works. But if you hit on, say, your 3 first-rounders, maybe one of the 2 quarterbacks, and then, say, one of the other 2 fourth-round picks between Crosby and Moreau. See, 5 out of 9. If 5 out of 9 are good, then this is a successful class. It would be a bonus if there's 6. Maybe an undrafted free agent makes his way too, which I don't have time to talk about. But let's also remember that the Raiders got Antonio Brown from this draft class when we want to be technical. They didn't have a 3rd or a 5th, but they were able to stock some picks and get some 4th rounders out of this class. So I'm actually fine with what they got and how they traded down the board and up. And it's a pretty fair game. I think the Raiders drafted fine, but we will see. It'll be about 3 to 5 years from now before we really determine what these guys are. On paper, they can help on day 1. I'm thankful they did not draft a quarterback early, and I don't think the quarterbacks in this class were very good anyways. But we do have to keep in mind, this could be Derek Carr's last year in a Raiders uniform if things don't go right. The Raiders could move in another direction when they go to Vegas and want their own guys. So what did you think about this class overall? I think it's fine. I'm not going to pump my fist like I did with Rolando McClain many years ago. Now that I'm an adult and in perspective, you got to think about everything. But this class makes perfect sense. I just got to see results. Okay, that's my problem. I'm always going to have to wait till I see it. Just like I got to wait till I see a shovel in the ground for the Oakland A's Stadium. We hear all these talks about them. The Oakland A's Stadium situation is moving. They're trying to move it, but there's no shovel in the ground yet. I got to see it to believe it. So that's my thoughts on this class. Overall, I like what I'm seeing, but time will tell. See you guys later. Go Raiders, and let me know what you thought.